Good afternoon, everyone. The May 20th, 2026 public hearing is called to order at 4 o'clock. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? No. I will move that the May 20th, 2026 public hearing agenda be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. Rules governing public hearings. In accordance with the Local Government Act, Council must hold a public hearing prior to adopting an official community plan bylaw, zoning bylaw, or amendment thereto, except where a public hearing is not required or is prohibited under provincial legislation, including where the proposed zoning bylaw or amendment is consistent with the official community plan and satisfies the criteria established by the province. At a public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in property affected by the proposed bylaws shall be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions on matters contained in the bylaw. The Council may give such effect as it deems fit to representations made at a public hearing in the bylaws as adopted. At a public hearing, the Council is under no obligation to enter into a debate on any issue. The purpose of a hearing is to hear public input, which will later be considered by the Council in their regular meeting. Following the public hearing, Council will not accept further communications or presentations from the public or the applicant respecting this bylaw. Councillor Anderson?
Right. So this is incredibly difficult to do. As I do live directly adjacent to the subject property, in order to avoid any perception of conflict or bias and to maintain the integrity of the process, I believe it's appropriate that I recuse myself until I get legal clearance from our municipal solicitors. So I'll be recusing myself. This has nothing to do with the hockey game. I think it's for the best. But I applaud everyone for showing up today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. We will now conduct a public hearing on the following bylaws: District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1394, 2026, and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1395, 2026. Once the public hearing is closed, Council cannot accept further communications or presentations from the applicant or public representing the proposed bylaw unless Council decides to hold an additional public hearing. The purpose of the hearing is to hear from the public before third reading of the bylaws. At the public hearing, all persons who deem their interest in the property affected by the proposed bylaws will be given an opportunity to be heard on matters contained in the bylaws. However, all those who speak must restrict their comments to the subject bylaws, and it is my responsibility to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. You will have 5 minutes to address Council for the first time. Staff will advise you at the 4-minute mark and when your time is up. After everyone has spoken once, those wishing to speak again will have an opportunity. After hearing submissions from members of the public, Council may ask questions to clarify what has been said. However, this is not a Q&A session or a town hall meeting. I would like to take a few moments to remind those who are attending in person about the rules of decorum for all Council and committee meetings. Council meetings are a place where local democracy is carried out in a respectful, open, and safe environment. The Council chamber is also a workplace, and we are committed to maintaining a safe and respectful environment for Council members, staff, and members of the public, consistent with WorkSafe requirements. In accordance with our procedure bylaw, disruptive or disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. We ask that there be no cheering, jeering, or other interruptions from the gallery. This ensures that all speakers, whether members of the public, staff, or Council, can present their views without distraction, intimidation, or fear of ridicule. If a disruption occurs, those responsible will be asked to stop. Should the behavior continue, individuals may be required to leave the meeting as permitted under Section 133 of the Community Charter. If necessary, council may call a recess to restore order in the chamber. We appreciate everyone's cooperation in maintaining a respectful atmosphere. By doing so, we can ensure that this meeting and future meetings are productive and focused on the business of the municipality. Today, members of the public can participate in person or electronically. All speakers must state their name and address. I will now ask Ms. Pelchat, Deputy Corporate Officer, to further detail how the public may participate in this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. All related materials, including the subject bylaws, are available for review on the back table and on the district's website. The public can participate in this hearing in person, by phone, by Zoom, or by emailing communityinput@ucluelet.ca. To speak in person, raise your hand when the mayor calls for in-person speakers. The mayor will call on you when it is your turn. You speak from the mic at the podium. To speak by Zoom, click the raise hand icon when the mayor calls for speakers via Zoom. When it is your turn, I will call on you by your Zoom name, so please ensure it is your first and last name. To speak by phone, press *9 when the mayor calls for speakers calling in. When it's your turn, I will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Any unpublished emails about the subject bylaws received at communityinput@ucluelet.ca before the end of the public hearing will be read into the record. Please put the bylaw numbers in the subject line and keep your emails short. Published correspondence will not be read. Thank you.
Thank you. Now moving into the proposed bylaws. The bylaws relate to the property on High Focus Island. Tyler Brown, Director of Planning and Strategic Initiatives, will now provide a brief overview of District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1394-2026 and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1395-2026. After the Director of Planning speaks, the applicant will have an opportunity to address council, after which I will call 3 times for public input. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Before you is an application that was presented by and put forward by Kistix Town Planning on behalf of the property owner, and they've applied to amend the official community plan and the zoning bylaw to rezone approximately 34 acres, which is known as High Focus Island. This would be to facilitate a comprehensive residential development. The applicant had made a previous submission, which was considered by council last year, and they have revised the concept since then based on some of the feedback through that process. As outlined in the first and second reading report, which was included as part of that public hearing package for the community and for council, the proposal includes substantial housing and also a community amenity package. The proposal was introduced to council on November 18th, 2025, and then council formally provided first and second reading of the associated OCP amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment on February 10th, 2026. In summary, the development proposal includes 85 dwelling units comprising 25 large single-family lots, 51 compact single-family homes with required secondary suites and accessory dwelling units, and 9 smaller single-family homes. The applicant has committed to the 51 compact single-family homes and the 9 smaller single-family properties being used for long-term tenancy only, with no short-term rentals permitted, which result in a minimum of 60 principal dwelling units, plus the potential for 51 long-term rental suites and accessory units. This represents a significant contribution to Ucluelet's long-term housing supply. As noted on the February 10th meeting, the official community bylaw the official community plan is required to be amended to facilitate the zoning amendment, and both were passed first and second reading. Further, staff were directed to give the statutory notice for the public hearing, which is tonight. And that notice has been given, and the notice materials have included in the public hearing package. And as you noted, Mayor, they've been posted prior to the hearing, but they're also here tonight if anyone is looking for those. I just wanted to note that the proponent has formally requested, after first and second reading was granted, that council consider a change to the zoning amendment bylaw. This would be to increase the maximum size, the gross floor area of accessory buildings within the proposed R7 zone from 60 square meters to 90 square meters to align with the R6 zone. After the close of the public hearing, we will provide the appropriate next steps if council wishes to consider that change to the bylaw. And that would occur at the third reading of the bylaw. We're just working with our solicitor to make sure we fully make sure the mechanics of that are appropriate. But we have confirmed with them to date that that would be considered a minor change and could be considered at the time of third reading. Following the close of the public hearing tonight, as you noted, Mayor, council cannot receive any further information regarding the proposal and amending bylaws. Staff will bring back the bylaws and potential options that I just outlined, as well as the minutes from the public hearing to a future council meeting for council's consideration of third reading. Nothing here tonight will facilitate any of approvals. As you noted, Mayor, this is just simply to hear from the public on these bylaws. And with that, I will happy to answer any questions from council on the process, but if there is none, I would turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions from council? No? All right. Would the applicant or their representative like to address council?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, and we appreciate the opportunity of speaking again this evening, and to give a high-level overview of our proposal for High Focus. My name is Paul Rosenau, and I'm one of the principals of Acoustics Town Planning in Vancouver. We're an urban planning and architecture firm, largely working in small communities on small master plan, typically residential developments, and have had an opportunity of doing that since 1992. So our firm is about 34 years old. I just wanted to start by saying that it has been an honor for us to be working in your community in the last 3 years. We've loved the time that we've spent here. I first came here in 1987 to kayak in the Broken Island group. Have done that again, probably 10 or 12 times since then. But in the last 3 years, we spent considerable more time here, and we really have fallen in love with your beautiful small island community. So I think we have a presentation. I'm not sure if you're able to pull it up, and I'll just say click onto the next slide. So we'll jump to the next one, please. So I think we just wanted to do a very high-level overview of the project, and if necessary, to answer any questions that council might have. So what is our project about? Our proposal is to build a new coastal neighborhood on High Focus Island with 85 homes that would be built over the next 10 to 12 years. We're planning to build a range of housing types that are designed primarily for long-term residents, including some rental secondary suites, which I think we're trying to propose in most communities that we're working now in BC as necessary mortgage helpers for people, particularly young families, to be able to get into the market. We have a scaled back plan that has been shaped through 3 years of comprehensive engagement with the local community, with the Ukulithat Nation, and of course with district staff. Next slide. So who is this housing for? It's primarily for young families, local workers and tradespeople, first-time home buyers, downsizers, long-term residents. The planning jargon for that group of people is the missing middle. We have not targeted, and the owner has asked us from day one to design a community that would meet the needs of local people, not tourism, not tourism accommodation, and certainly not a resort-oriented development for tourists. And I think we've tried hard to do that. Next slide. Our plan is to build small, compact homes that will address Ukulit's current and, as we understand, urgent housing needs. We've thrown some pictures on the screen there that are similar to what we would be proposing, particularly on the inside of the island for these 51 compact homes and the 9 even more compact units that would not have the secondary suites. So these examples, I think, are what we would call housing that is being designed and can be attained by that missing middle in typical BC communities. And certainly we feel that the day of the 3,000 square foot home on the 10,000 square foot lot is largely over. And that's why we've designed kind of this community the way we have. Next slide. So I think I just wanted to show this this image. I'm sure council has seen it before. This is kind of the before and after of what we're proposing, and is actually the purpose of the public hearing tonight, which is to amend the official community plan from what is to what we would like it to be. And as you can see on that map, the primary change is taking that light yellow blob that was, designed according to a very different pattern at that time, including 2 large gray institutional parcels, and reshaping that into the new yellow blobs, which is largely based on environmental studies and archaeological work that we have done. And I think you can see that one of the major changes is that all of the land that is fronting onto the inner harbor entrance, kind of on the upper right-hand side of the island, is now all green, including 2 blue parcels that would be dedicated to the municipality to use as you see fit. Particularly the one that is on the ocean, kind of bookended by those 2 green parcels, is a very developable, beautiful piece of land, almost flat, that we have offered up as part of our dedication, not necessarily as park, but as a piece of land that could be developed for any municipal use. We've heard that there's a huge demand for daycare, in Ucluelet right now. So for example, that might be a parcel that is deemed to be necessary at some point in time for that kind of use. We have not asked to develop more land than the current OCP allows. We've simply taken those bubbles and moved them around and created what we think is a more responsible and sustainable OCP land use plan. We do have a little rendering there on the next slide. Again, a little bit of artist license, just showing kind of a bird's eye perspective of our proposal, with the 25 external lots facing onto the inner cove and the outer harbor, and then the 51 and the 9 compact lots towards the center of the island. Next slide. So listening and responding. Community feedback has played a central role in shaping this project. I think that's probably why we've been at this for almost 3 years now. And we just wanted to draw attention to kind of 5 specific things that we've heard. The one thing that we heard, I think almost from day one, is that our proposal had too much density. Even though this island had been designated for residential use in a previous and current official community plan, we started with a plan that had 350 units. It was then reduced to 150 units, and we've now reduced it to 85 single-family homes. We heard from day one that we should be designing our homes for local people, not for tourists or people from Vancouver wanting second homes, and we've largely tried to do that, a plan that supports long-term residents and families. We were told to protect the shoreline and to set back development, particularly from the inner harbor with the First Nations community across the water. So we've preserved over 50% of the island as open space, most of which is dedicated to the district. We are told that our project was going to produce too much traffic on Helen Road, and people were worried about safety issues of kids walking to school on that road. So we proposed to upgrade Helen Road all the way from our property boundary out to Peninsula Road with a sidewalk along the entirety of that road. We also undertook a traffic study, which we provided to your staff, that shows that even at full build out, which again will take up to 10 to 12 years, we will maintain a level of service A, which is the highest level of service for traffic on any road in BC. The final thing that we've done, and we've been out on site and we've hired, expert engineers, two of whom are here actually this evening, to help fix the odor problem at the sewage lagoon. And we feel strongly that that we'll be able to do that in conjunction with district staff. Quickly, I think next slide, we just wanted to talk about three primary benefits that we believe that we're bringing to Ucluelet. Next slide. The first one is homes that are designated for Ucluelet residents that we've been able to see over the course of the 3 years that we're working here, that there's a huge and somewhat urgent demand for. So smaller scale homes for local residents with a target price range of $650,000 to $850,000. In particular, I think what we've heard is even if you can buy a lot in Ucluelet, currently there's no builder that is building turnkey homes with 10-year warranties that you could buy a home today in that price range. And that's what we're hoping that you'll give us permission to do. Homes that are designed for families, downsizers, and for long-term living. And of course, we've tried to design a master plan that supports some housing diversity at a range of price points. Therefore, the three different product types that we've been proposing. Next slide. We've worked hard to not only think about housing for the community, but how to strengthen the local infrastructure. So four, and I've added a fifth point here, evaluating opportunities to open up the channel between Spring Cove and the Ucluelet Harbor that was filled in, sometimes referred to as the Causeway. We're dedicated to opening that up. And that's something that in our engagement with the First Nations was extremely important to them. Essentially trying to make High Focus Island an island again. Full municipal services throughout our development and the improvement of Helen Road, of course, to municipal standards, including a sidewalk all the way to Peninsula Road. The provision of a tsunami warning system that we've coordinated with the district. And then, of course, upgrades to any offsite water and sanitary sewer systems as deemed necessary by your district staff. And finally, third, the next slide, community amenities and land dedication. So we have 14.85 acres of land that we're dedicating to the district for park space, protected natural areas, and future utilities as you see necessary. That includes this 1 acre municipal park that we've dedicated to be used, as you see fit. We've additionally added a 30-meter shoreline buffer around the entire periphery of the island, including forest cover along the entire northeast shoreline facing the Ucluelet community. Next slide, please. The team that we have working on the development, you probably know most of them. Chris, I think, who might be here tonight from Saltwater, Brian Pudney from Rennie, who's helping us with the marketing and real estate, Gabrielle, who's our local civil engineer who lives here in Ucluelet, and then of course ourselves and June from Vancouver. So we feel like we've developed a strong local team. We've been spending more and more time in your community, and if all goes well, I think we're even hoping to build a home here ourselves. So we felt it was important for you to know that we've hired local people that would be working on this project with us over the next 10 to 12 years. This is, I think, the final slide. And I think I wanted to just spend 2 minutes on this, and then I'll finish. So in 2021, as part of the district's OCP growth analysis, staff explored what a long-term, low-growth future for Ucluelet might look like. One that focused on strengthening housing for residents while limiting continued expansion of tourist accommodation. That analysis had identified that there was a need for approximately 826 homes to be built over a 30-year period. Of course, this is in 2021, which is already 5 years ago. So you take 826 homes and you divide it by 30 years, that's around 27 homes per year that were deemed necessary in the lowest growth scenario. High Focus Island represents one of the few significant housing proposals currently moving forward in Ucluelet that is primarily focused on long-term residential living. Over time, the proposal would deliver 85 homes that include secondary suites, compact homes, and housing that's intended for local families. Assuming these homes are built over 10 years, that represents approximately 8 to 10 houses per year, still well below the 27 homes that were required within the district's own long-term low-growth strategy. So we recognize this project will not solve the housing challenges on its own, but we do believe it represents a meaningful and measured contribution towards the type of housing growth that the district, we understand, desperately needs. So just finally, every community faces difficult conversations around change and growth. But over the last 3 years, we've consistently seen and heard that there is a pretty serious housing crisis in Ucluelet. And we've heard that at our public information meetings, and we've certainly heard it from people that are looking for housing here. Today, there are no new, what we would call move-in ready homes that are being built for young couples that can buy a home with a mortgage helper, a home that's essentially turnkey with a 10-year warranty, and we're hoping that we can be that builder. Through this proposal, we are not only delivering housing, but also investing in roads, parks, trails, municipal infrastructure, and long-term community amenities. We believe we are providing sustainable and desirable growth to the exact people that need it, and we are excited about the opportunity to create a neighborhood in high focus that we think will be one of the best neighborhoods in your town. So thank you for the opportunity of speaking tonight, and again, it's been an honor for us to work here in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenau. Does council have any questions for the applicant? No.
One quick question, technical question. Don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have details ready. I was hoping you could maybe just very briefly elaborate on the plans to replace the causeway with a flow through to re-islandize the island.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes. I'll take a stab at it, and then our civil engineer who's here, who's actually helping to design that road, she may want to add to that later. Essentially, as part of our Helen Road reconstruction, which is largely widening the paved surface of that road with a sidewalk along one side, we would be opening up the causeway, and I think the proposal that makes most sense is to put in 2 large concrete box culverts. So we're not proposing to do a bridge, but the box culverts would allow water to flow and for the inner cove to eventually start kind of clearing itself out. It would not necessarily be navigable, although as we've joked around, if we were 12 years old in a kayak, we would probably try to do it, but it's not meant to be, you know, an opening that, you know, that people should be, you know, swimming or taking kayaks through. I think what was most important to the First Nations people was that this used to be an island, that water used to be flowing, you know, around the entirety of the island, and that is important to not only their or the ecosystem of the water that's in that inlet, but it's even affecting some of the flow on the other side of the channel, as some of the land in front of their community has begun to you know, essentially, you know, sediment itself in just because there's no longer flow kind of moving through this opening. So we believe that it's financially feasible. Our civil engineer may talk a little bit about that later, and we've included that component of the work in our initial cost analysis and preliminary design for Helen Road.
Thank you.
Councillor Noel?
I have a follow-up here. Get back to the mic if you don't mind. So there's been a lot of developments and we've rezoned a lot of things, you know, and a lot of them have never transpired. So maybe you can elaborate if you were successful, how you'd see that, because one of the big fears are obviously rezoning something and they just sit there stagnant.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, because we've seen that, you know, essentially happen all over the province, and we've seen it happen over the last couple of years since we've been here, you know, happen in Ucluelet as well. We have an owner that has no debt on this property. We've worked hard to look at staging analysis ourselves, just in terms of how we would actually, build this out if we're in fact only able to build 5 to 8 or 10, homes per year, which is what we think the market could actually absorb. So we have phasing plans that kind of look very specifically at how to stage the infrastructure, of when the timing of the Helen Road construction would take place, of what offsites are necessary, because there is a significant offsite change to one of the water pipes that we would need to build to service the island for fire flow, and have run lots of different kind of spreadsheet analyses, and just in terms of making sure that what we're proposing is actually affordable. We presented that to the owner of the island, Mr. Liu, and he's committed to that program. So beyond being able to say we're committed to building those homes, at the end of the day, as you've seen, here, rezonings happen. In some cases, construction doesn't follow. We're certainly committed to building this out. I think one of the questions that we've had is, well, why not just do 30 homes? And to be honest, if we were only able to do 30 homes, it would be very difficult to make the numbers work, just in terms of the offsites and the improvements on Helen Road, and the other amenities that we're planning to build out. There is a critical mass of houses that are necessary to kind of make that happen, but we're certainly committed to starting that out. We're working with Chris, who's here tonight, on preliminary designs of some of the initial compact homes. He feels that he's able to build perhaps up to 5 of those per year, and that's essentially our plan. Not sure if that answers your question, but we're committed to doing this.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions for the applicant, we'll move on to the public input section of the public hearing. So this is the first call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to address District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1394, 2026, and District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1395, 2026? Please raise your hand. We have read all the letters, just so you know. We've received a fair number of letters from the public. We've read them all, so no need to get up to the microphone and read them out loud. Yes. Okay, Ms. Black.
Hi, Lindsay Black here, Mayor and Council. Thank you, staff. I'm at 1049 Helen Road, adjacent to the parcel we're discussing today. I just want to talk about a couple of things. Last night's bylaw review identified the potential for up to approximately 1,100 new pre-zone units to become available through the proposed zoning bylaw changes and OCP review process. The current OCP review is already considering additional multifamily housing opportunities and single-family infill throughout the community. And in light of these ongoing planning exercises, it appears that the district is already actively addressing the housing needs report through broader and more comprehensive planning measures. Given this, amendment to the OCP specifically for the high focus proposal appears premature and untimely, while the district is in the middle of a full OCP and bylaw review process. There are already other developments underway, including Shore Pine Road, the Weyerhaeuser lands, which are more consistent with the current OCP and are expected to add housing supply similar in nature to what High Focus is already proposing. In contrast, the High Focus proposal appears to represent a substantial departure from the current OCP and concerns about consistency and fairness in land use decision-making. There's also broader concerns regarding the cumulative impacts on infrastructure, parking, traffic, water, sewer capacity, community services during peak tourism periods when the community is already under pressure. I find it difficult to understand the rationale for continuing to approve large-scale development proposals while the district is simultaneously acknowledging infrastructure constraints and undertaking this comprehensive OCP review process. It's also important to note the inconsistency in planning rationale. Recently, the proposed subdivision of the rainforest lot into 2 parcels was denied largely because the original intent was to preserve large lots near the center of town, despite the proposal generally aligning with the OCP. Approving a significant OCP amendment for one project while So I think it's setting a precedent before the review is complete. And I'd like to lastly just question why short-term rentals are still being contemplated within this proposed development when there are already ongoing concerns regarding market saturation and the availability of attainable housing within the community. Council has the ability to regulate and place limitations on new development proposals and newly created uses without interfering with existing property rights of current owners who purchased under previous regulations and expectations. If attainable housing is truly at the forefront of this discussion, it seems contradictory to continue permitting additional short-term rental opportunities within large new developments, particularly when the community is already experiencing housing pressures for local residents and workers. Overall, I think it would be more prudent to complete the ongoing OCP and zoning bylaw review process first, and then fully assess infrastructure capacity and remaining housing needs, and then determine whether or not these amendments of this scale are still necessary and appropriate for the community moving forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Mr. Lyons? No, people on Zoom won't be able to hear you if you're not at the podium. Oh, wait a minute. Ah.
I call this meeting to order. Just a curious question. The houses that are going to be made available for locals, is that going to be enforced by the developer or council? And secondly, when I buy my own size house and I come to sell it, does that law still apply or regulation still apply?
I believe the developer is in the audience, so you may at the break ask those questions yourself.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Ms. Martin?
My name is Shirley Martin. I live at 1147 Helen Road. I'm one of those pesky Helen Road people. So it was, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today about my concerns. So it was mentioned at one point that every community has a Helen Road. Apparently we can be the problem. I could bore you with the fact that I've lived on Helen Road for almost 75 years, but then the violins would start and you'd all start rolling your eyes. So I live near the causeway. And because I live near the causeway, I've voiced some concerns. We've voiced some concerns and then we've been called NIMBYs. I mean, I didn't even know what LOL meant. It means laugh out loud. Okay. So NIMBY means not in my neighborhood. Well, I am concerned about our neighborhood. We have a pretty relaxed, laid-back neighborhood. I've been to almost all of these hearings, starting with the very first information session. The first person I talked to, I said, I live really close to the causeway. How is this going to affect traffic by my quiet little home? Oh, minimal, he said. Minimal. Minimal in Vancouver or LA, maybe. So, and also I'm going to mention that at that very first open house, the person I talked to wasn't aware of any middens on High Focus. So I'm very pleased to hear that they've educated themselves on that. And then they actually had a special information session for people just from Helen Road, which I really appreciated. And at that point, I do realize I'm a bit of a Ucluelet relic, and I mentioned something about past history. And at that point I heard the comment, that was old Ucluelet. We're talking about new Ucluelet. I would like to say that we all live in Ucluelet and we all should have some say about where this is going. I guess, okay, that also brings to mind the terminology local. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I've only lived here 35 years, so I'm not quite a local. Maybe at 40 years you're a local, but no, if you live here, you're a local. And I've met lots of people who have just moved to Ucluelet. I know people that have lived here even older than me, my God, older than 75, that have lived here all their lives. We all care about this town. We all have a certain way of life that we appreciate. And I'm not sure that overdevelopment is going to actually enhance that. And then, okay, good thing I have notes. So you think about why, I'd like you to, all of you think about why you live here, what you love about Ucluelet, the small town vibe, the nature, just what this town is all about, and whether the overdevelopment is going to contribute to that. One comment I heard when I complained about possibilities of all the overdevelopment was, oh, only homeowners are complaining about this, and they're only complaining because they don't want the value of their homes to drop. And I kind of resent that comment that we all have dollar signs in our eyes. We actually care about the way of life here and the nature of our town. Back to past history. This is not our first rodeo, okay? It is not our first rodeo. We have seen what has happened with Wait and See. I'm sorry, Wind and See. And we like to call it Wait and See. There's a lot of developments around town that are just sitting there. I'd like to know what's going to happen with Victoria Drive. Pine Ridge is developed and open for business. What about Monado Drive? Hundreds of people supposedly are going to live in affordable housing in Monado Drive. Like, how many hundred people can we handle? And I do agree we need affordable housing. I think First Light has been a really good step towards that. I'm not sure that we can be positive that these buildings are going to be affordable housing. I don't know that there's a guarantee for that. I did see a realtor's ad inviting people to the
Mayor?
beautiful cities of Ucluelet and Tofino, and I think that's part of the problem. We're not a city. And when you look at that, it's like somebody's taken a piece of city and dropped it on High Focus Island. High Focus Island is like it's at a dead end street. I know because I live really close to it. Keith was fire chief for 17 years. When I asked him about, you know, the common sense of having a development of that size on a dead end island, one way in, one way out, he said, well, he said a few things, but one was that it was laughably ludicrous. I mean, emergency, tsunami warnings, like wildfires are just emergency response. It's a dead end, one way in, one way out.
Shirley, if I could get you to wrap up, please.
I'll wrap up, yes.
Thank you.
I'll wind it down, Marilyn. I mean, your worship, I'm sorry. So I just believe that the owners knew what the zoning of the property was when they bought it. And I would request that you maintain it as rural residential. I'm kind of speaking from love of place here. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns. And I'd like to thank you all for the devotion you have to Ucluelet and representing us.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Chris.
Chris Bosman, what's our address? 847 Lauren White Place. I own Saltwater Building Company in town. I think that's pretty commonly known. Should this go through, we would be likely named. Is that better? The builder. We would look forward to building that as a product. Long and the short of it, as a builder in Ucluelet, like that's how we put food on our table. We build houses, we build amphitrite lighthouses, we build community theaters in Tofino. We build stuff. That's what we do for a living. And there's a pretty big group of people in this community who are part of that. On any given day, we probably have 50 local Ucluelet residents working on our different job sites directly, and then indirectly, probably another 20, servicing that through suppliers and other groups. So it's not a small industry. There's an economic impact here that I think shouldn't be overlooked. There's some stuff that has to be worked through on this project. I'm the first to say that, like, coming up with Helen Road and getting that up to an engineering standard, which I have a fair bit of trust in Gabriel and the team at Vinny to do. There's a document called the MMCD that outlines really clearly how to do that. And I also have a fair bit of trust in the guys at I think it's MSR Solutions to manage the sewage stuff. That's what they do. And these are engineering challenges that they're going to have to be sorted out, and they're going to have to be sorted out not just to get permits, but to make a successful community out there. They've got a good team to do it. So from my standpoint, I don't see it as like a big deviation from what's in the OCP. I actually see it as being like fairly aligned and with what's in the OCP. And I would like to say, for those who are, God, I don't want to bring age, but those looking to be first-time home buyers, those looking to set roots in a town, there's not a lot of options, and we're one of the people building them. And like my experience is, so far we've never had a first-time home buyer be able to afford what it costs to build on a single-family lot that's currently available in this town. I don't think this is really truly affordable housing in the definition of what that is for 30% of gross, average income of the community. But, and this is the big but, there's also no government funding in it. And if the intent of the community and the council is to only approve projects with government funding that would meet those metrics of housing affordability, I think that ship sailed. We're watching BC Housing got all of its funding gutted out of it. CMHC isn't releasing much either. Those programs are becoming increasingly complex and challenging to achieve funds for. The District of Ucluelet, on projects that I've been involved in, has applied for those projects and to do it and has failed. And we failed for no other reason than the fact that we're a small town and we can't build 60-unit condos because that's what they want to fund. That's it. Like I went to the debrief. Like it's that simple. So to have somebody who's willing to do what they can to keep things as affordable within a free market with private funds and private investment, it's not something to overlook because it doesn't come around every day.
Thanks for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Ms. Lee?
Hi, my name is Susan Lee, and I live at 1162 Helen Road. And just a comment to councillors, I think I'm really hard of hearing, but if you could use your mics a little more, I'd hear you better. So I'm going to try to use this one properly. Anyway, I'm opposed to the proposed bylaw OCP amendments. I think the proposal by Maywind is not suitable for the community where we're located, for all of the reasons that some of the speakers have brought up and that I'm sure you have received in your correspondence. I think the housing that we need in this community, I got 4 kind of categories. We need to house the underhoused people already living here, the young families, people that are in precarious housing situations. We need housing for new residents that are going to move to town for specific specialized jobs like bylaw officer that has to come from out of town or health professionals. We need to have housing stock for folks like that. We need housing for seasonal and temporary workers for our busy seasons. And we need affordable or rental geared to income type housing, rental type housing. I don't think we need a whole huge, large number of additional housing that goes beyond meeting those needs that I've expressed. Sorry, nerves. I think the Maywind proposal will address some of those needs for sure, but certainly not all of them. And I think it is much larger development than we need to satisfy some of those needs. That I think it's too dense for the location that it's proposed for, as previously for previously expressed reasons. And it will have specific negative consequences to the many existing Ucluelet residents that live along the whole length of Helen Road. This doesn't just impact the dozen or so houses between Marine and High Focus. The whole road will be impacted in a negative way. So this project has many boons and it has many banes, and I'm not sure that the boons are so I guess for me, the ultimate considerations when we look at large development proposals such as this, I have twofold concerns. One is the cumulative effect on the whole town of all the developments that are under consideration or on the books or being discussed. And the other one is the long-term outcomes of this continued development in our community. I don't actually believe anymore in that old school idea that a community needs constant growth in order to be vibrant and successful. I think that's largely the way of thinking that has got our planet in a climate crisis and an ecological crisis, because we have this belief that everything has to grow. We have to use more. We have to use more resources and so on. And I don't think that we need to feel that we must accept all housing proposals or all development proposals because we have to grow in order to be a successful community. I think we can control how much, when, and how we grow. It's not the developers that need to tell us these things and then or guilt us into thinking we have to accommodate their requirements because we have to grow or we have to build more and more housing. In fact, the more people and the bigger we grow as a community and the more people we attract to this community, we'll actually just continue to have the same problems, but on a different scale. So we can build housing now to solve our current needs. More people will come and those needs will continue to be, it's just like
5 minutes, Mayor.
What, sorry?
Just mentioning that you're at your 5-minute mark.
Oh,
You get to
okay.
wrap it up.
I have a limit. Okay, so I won't talk about the bridge analogy that explains that if you keep throwing resources at a problem, you only just make the problem get bigger. And okay, so I just want to touch about the future, the end game here. We know that the development's going to take time, and it may, okay, 5 houses a year for this particular development. But in the end, it will all get built. So hopefully, maybe it'll all get built. But in the end, we have to still live with the results of all these particular developments that are scheduled. And So I think we have to think, what kind of town do we want to leave the younger people? What kind of town do we want to leave our future residents? And it's not just, oh yeah, we can accommodate 5 houses a year. For me, that's not going to be a problem. 5 more houses coming along Helen Road won't kill me, but what about, and I'm pretty old, but what about in the end game? Is that the town we want this Ucluelet to become?
Susan, if you could please wrap up.
Done? Cut me off?
No, just any closing statement? would you
Yeah,
like?
section, but I think I'll leave it at that. I think I've made my general feelings known. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Gabriel.
Okay, hello. I guess I'll first say I appreciate all my neighbors and friends who have come to express their opinion on the project. So my name is Gabriel. I'm a resident of Ucluelet. I'm also a civil engineer. What I'm saying right now is just mostly focused on the infrastructure that is related to the community. So my company, Benny, has been hired by Ekistics to provide the civil design for the project. So this includes the water distribution system, the sanitary system, the stormwater conveyance system, and also the roadwork upgrades, which includes the full streetscape upgrades along Helen, and then the pedestrian connectivity to Marine, or sorry, along Marine to Peninsula. So our work also includes reopening the causeway, and I'm sure that everyone's already heard that the island was previously logged, and the logging company infilled the area between the island and the mainland. And after engaging with First Nations and other members of the community, it became apparent that reopening the causeway is a priority for this project. And yes, right now we are thinking with box culverts. We've also been hired to address the odor issues from the sewer lagoon. We have hired a specialist who has MSR Consulting. They're here in the room. They've had many years of experience in Ucluelet. And to date, we've identified several potential contributors to the odor issues, as well as workable solutions. Sorry, I'm shaking. I have no idea why. Like, I know you people, but okay. So while I'm not a traffic engineer, I did review the traffic reporting. So after full build out of the project, traffic will increase by 1 car per minute at peak travel times. So that would be between 8 and 9 a.m. and 4 and 5 p.m. In traffic engineering, this is not considered a material change. Impacts to the existing water and sanitary sewer system have been reviewed. So currently, with the numbers that we have, with the sanitary rates and the water usage, there are no downstream sanitary upgrades required. So there is no gravity sewer upgrades, no force main upgrades, or pump station upgrades. And that's just because the property's at the end of the system. So we're right there at the lagoons. Half the site will go straight to the treatments, the lagoons, and the other half will go to the Helen Road pump station. The water main on Helen will need to be upsized to provide the adequate fire flow for the community. So this upgrade would be done at the same time as the roadworks. So it needs to increase 1 pipe size. We recently prepared a cost estimate for this works. I'm not actually, I guess I can reveal. The cost estimate right now is $25 million for the civil infrastructure. Actually closer to $26 million. And that does not include certain line items that we don't know right now, like rock blasting. Off-site, there are over $4.5 million of proposed off-site upgrades. So off-site meaning beyond the property boundary. So those would, like I already mentioned, include the full streetscape upgrades along Helen, the sidewalk to Peninsula, reopening of the causeway, and addressing the odor issues. So I will say, outside of my engineering role, as a resident, I do support this project. My main reason being is that it will provide the needed housing in this community that we have talked about like ad nauseum at this point. And I do like the different options available. but also because I feel Acoustics and the owner have been receptive to the community feedback and have thoughtfully reworked their plans several times to be more in line with the feedback that they have received. And they have also, from my understanding and communication, have properly engaged with the First Nations communities, and they have done their engineering and environmental due diligence. With that, if there's any additional questions, I'll be hanging around after the meeting. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for your comments. And right on time. Good for you. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? We're going first timers first. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Rachel Turner. I live at 168 Fraser Lane, which is not right on Helen, but Helen adjacent. I'm writing today to express some concerns about this proposal and the amendments to the OCP and the zoning bylaws. First of all, I want to say that the OCP changes for this do align with the current OCP, which is great to see. However, they don't align with the zoning bylaw. So, and they don't align for the zoning, the community vision, the zoning, which is rural residential. And I'm first going to say that housing is desperately needed in this community. I am part of that missing middle that was used in the presentation. So I will acknowledge that. I'm a long-term renter that aspires to own a home in town one day, and I admire the fact that they tried to include some affordable options, even though it's not really that affordable. So back to my zoning amendment. So this portion of town is currently designated rural residential, which means large lot residential, a minimum of 10 hectares that are limited residential uses with a maximum of 2 residences per lot. With a few calculations on the current lot size, if we were to subdivide the current parcel into the 10 hectare minimum, there would be about 14 lots and a maximum of 28 units on between those 14 lots. Zoning amendment put forth by the developer changes this immensely by allowing up to 80 homes to be subdivided in the current parcel, which is about a 415% increase in lot size. I think this is quite dense and doesn't necessarily align with what the current zoning is, hence why they're asking for a zoning amendment. My second column is the active transportation infrastructure. I do acknowledge that the developer said that they are willing to upgrade Helen Road to Peninsula Road. I'd like to make a comment that Peninsula Road runs parallel to Helen Road, so there might need some clarity if they mean to Main Street or just to Marine Drive. In which case, if they just mean to Marine Drive, then that doesn't actually acknowledge the rest of Helen Road, which will also be subject to a large increase in traffic. And I acknowledge that the developer put into place trails and sidewalk network and upgraded road infrastructure on the parcel. My concern is actually more with the district's larger active transportation planning and the lack of network in that area and how this connects all together. Helen Road is narrow. I walk on there every single day. Two cars can barely fit at most places, and there's no sidewalk. So I'm really hoping that if this zoning amendment goes through and OCP amendment goes through, that the district really thinks about their active transportation plan, which was last updated in 2011, which is over 15 years ago. Helen Road's not a priority corridor in this active transportation plan, so I'd really like to see some work on that end alongside the developer, and I'm sure that could be acknowledged. Finally, the cultural and ecological integrity of the location is subject to be altered in this development. So in map 3 of the OCP, High Focus Island is high in archaeological and cultural potential, seen as it's a historical burial ground for the Ucluelet, as well as some other people shared that there's middens on there. It is also subject to terrestrial DPAs and Schedule E, as the land contains mature tree coverage and sensitive ecosystems. I believe changing the zoning would really impact these DPAs. Obviously, the developer will have to go through the DPA process for this, but I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you. That I think there's actually a lot more at stake here than maybe it was what was given in this presentation. Cultural monitoring of the sites through development can be quite costly, and it's just something else to consider. And finally, that this is an important wildlife corridor. We've been seeing an increase in human-wildlife conflict recently, and I just would like council to keep this in mind moving forward, as I could see more density in this area, increasing that human-wildlife conflict. Finally, there are many parcels already zoned in town. I think that will meet more of our housing needs. There's a large sign at the beginning of town now that says there's a bunch of hectares available for developers. So potentially council looking into those lots more, like Monado Road, Marine Drive, and Seaplane Base. And yeah, that is all I will have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? I think Brian was first, sorry.
Hey, good evening, council. I'd like to start. My name is Brian. I'm 1339 Edwards Place. I'm a realtor with Rennie, but tonight I'm here as a dad. I chose to raise my family in Ucluelet. I walk this town every day. I know half the faces I pass on the street, and I love this about this community. I love that I can leave my house, go to the Break Cafe, run into all my friends and neighbors. The community of parents and young kids here is just so amazing. I left Vancouver for the purpose of raising my kids here, to be able to play at the beach and not need an iPad to keep them distracted. It's been such an amazing experience so far. That's why I'm standing up here for this project tonight, because I want to see this town I want this town to still be a real community when my kids are grown. And right now, I'm not sure it will be, unless we start making room for more young families and others who'd like to live this dream. Because I'm a realtor here, I also want to make something clear, because I think fear is filling the gaps where facts should be. Right now, our OCP already designates High Focus Island for single-family residential development. And just to speak, currently it's rural residential, but the OCP is stating the plan was to make it single-family residential at a higher density. That's not what's being debated tonight. We decided that years ago. What the developer is asking for is a modest adjustment to the OCP, a slightly different site configuration that actually results in a far better outcome for this community. Because in exchange for the adjustment, the town receives, and we haven't mentioned this enough, almost 15 acres of green space, a forest buffer around the entirety of the island, and land protected, kept wild, and used for community services like childcare. There's been so much give back from the developer on this. 50% of the land on this site has been given back to the district, or is proposed to be given back to this district. And throughout this process, I had many conversations, specifically with some of the board of the childcare services, and they are always looking for spaces for their facilities and new childcare. Land doesn't just show up and get gifted to the district. In this case, it has been. So the real question isn't whether homes get built on High Focus. The OCP already says so. The question is whether we get 15 acres back in the process, or if we don't. Now, the economics. I hear some pushback during this. I read a lot of letters. I've obviously been talked to a bunch in the street, and there were some comments made that it was going to be really expensive to build on this property, 500 square foot to build. And yes, the 25 lots along the perimeter of this property are going to be left for the buyers of those properties to decide what they want to do with. 500, 1,000, it's up to them. But that's entirely up to the future owners who buy those lots. That's what custom homes are, and that's not the bulk of this project. The bulk of this project is 51 homes with long-term rental suites. Let me say that again, 51 homes, long-term rental suites. Those will be built in the 300s per square foot. That's what makes them attainable. That's what makes the $650,000 to $850,000 price point real. Those aren't luxury homes. Those are homes with mortgage helpers, 10-year warranties, built for families who actually need a place to live. And the reality of the pace that these will be built is about maybe 5, maybe 10 homes a year over the course of 5 to 10 years. That's not so bad. Because I'm a realtor here, I also see the direct impacts of not building housing. I personally sold that home last year for $950,000, modest 3-bedroom home with a suite. That literal same home a year later went for $1 million or $1.1 million, $150,000 more. Then recently I listed a similar home for 1.2. And today, a brand new 3-bedroom home in the Shore Pine development, which has been mentioned multiple times, just listed for $1,249,000. That's a 3-bedroom home with a suite. That is the new normal for Yuki. That same style of home here is appreciating at an incredible rate. Homes with suites are the bulk of what my clients want, and the prices are surging because there isn't enough available. My last 2 3-bedroom listings sold in under 48 hours, simple supply and demand. This is not something to ignore. Those home sellers are stoked. They got a high price, now they get to move on. But anyone trying to enter the market is struggling. This project will help so many young families and couples thinking about starting a family.
Thanks, Brian, if you could wrap up, please.
I'm almost done here. And some of those are the most important people in the community. With Manado Bay no longer moving forward, High Focus is carrying the town's housing future on its own. I'll ask plainly, where else are these homes going to be built? Who else is ready to build them? The argument isn't against projects. No, the argument against this project sounds like it's protecting Ucluelet. But look closely at who it actually protects. It protects those who already own. It does nothing for the young family. It does nothing for the worker living in a trailer, nothing for the senior who wants to downsize but has nowhere to go. I understand the fear of change. I live here too. But a town that stops making room for people doesn't stay the same. It slowly becomes a place only the comfortable can afford. I'm a proud dad. I chose this place to raise my kids. I'm not leaving. And the people who need these homes deserve someone in this room saying so. 51 homes, long-term rental suites, 9 micro homes, 25 lots that remain treed until developed by new owners, 15 acres back to the community, under $900,000, ready to build. That's not a risk. That's the answer. I urge council to support this project. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Are there any other members of the public attending in person? Oh, you were next, I think. You had your hand up.
I'm getting old. Need glasses. But not for driving. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Robert Gallagher, and I live at 760 Marine Drive. In May of 2025, my wife and I came to Ucluelet on vacation and unexpectedly bought a home. We returned to Ontario, left our jobs, sold our house, packed up our lives, and drove across the country with our 2 black Labradors. I first thought our story was unusual, but after meeting others in Yuki, I realized many residents came here in much the same way. Since settling here, I've seen how closely housing and tourism are tied to the community's growth. As a new business owner and full-time resident, I've seen how the lack of permanent housing affects both local residents and seasonal workers in an industry that helps sustain our economy. Recently, a server at a local restaurant told me that she'd been looking for a rental place for 8 months. A young tradesman who worked on my house recently also said he might have to move back to the mainland because he could not find anything he could afford. Expecting seasonal and trade workers who are essential to Yuki's tourism industry to live in tents or campgrounds is neither sustainable nor reasonable. These are not just housing statistics. These are people I know that I've met, people I've had coffee with, people I've met in the street. It is hard to watch them struggle and stay here or leave altogether. After listening carefully tonight, perhaps there's a simple way to look at this project. The OCP already identifies high focus for housing. We know that. So that part of the decision has largely been made. What is being considered tonight is a modest change, as we've also discussed, on how the development would proceed. In return, the community would receive a significant land donation, including forest, green space, and be preserved for parklands, trails, play areas for children. the town will still decide how the land is ultimately used. These homes would be priced according to market conditions and designed for families. They would let the homeowners offset mortgage costs by affording long-term rental suites for local families, seasonal workers, and young adults who want to make Yuki home for more than just a season. Young families are essential to the kind of community this town wants to be. If they can't afford to stay and contribute over the long term, we need to consider what that means for Yuki's future. I would like to see restaurants and coffee shops stay open year-round and close after the busy season only by choice, not because there are too few residents to support them. I'd also like to see innovative ideas, new energy, and new people fall in love with this place as my wife and I did, and have the chance to stay. On a side note, having worked in the public sector in the past in Ontario, I respect the duty to consult process and the importance it has to our community decisions. And the fact that this developer has maintained and utilized the duty to consult in a proactive way, I think shows a tremendous amount of respect and dignity for and integrity for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think we'll move on to Zoom because there will be two other opportunities for speakers from the audience. Are there any members of the public attending by Zoom that wish to speak?
Yes, Mayor, we have Judy Gray. I will now allow Judy Gray to speak. Ms. Gray, you may speak. Ms. Gray, if you could unmute your mic. Maybe we'll move on to the next speaker. We have Patricia.
I'm there. Sorry,
Okay, perfect.
I didn't see the button, and it's on my phone here today. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Judy Gray, and I live at 2349 Tofino Ucluelet Highway. I'm here tonight to oppose the proposed OCP amendment bylaw number 1394 and the large-scale proposed development for High Focus Island. Just want to add in here that High Focus Island was owned long time by former realtor and former mayor of Ucluelet, Ron Burley, and recently deceased. And it was his vision to have larger parcels of land on that island. I also want to note that OCPs prior to the current OCP do not support large-scale development on High Focus Island. And I find and do not support a lot of the current OCP as I don't feel it had enough public input into it. And it was drawn and drafted by a team that most of are gone now from our staff. Anyway, this issue is not about being anti-development. Many of you know me as a long-standing realtor in Ucluelet of over 30 years, and I'm not against development. It's about appropriate development in an environmentally sensitive and physically constrained location. High Focus Island is unique within Ucluelet. It's one of the few remaining natural island environments connected to our community. And historically, it was never envisioned as a high density or medium density residential neighborhood. The earlier official community plan specifically emphasized preserving the island's natural character, ecological integrity, mature forest, and protection from hazardous conditions, including tsunami and flooding risks. The proposal before council represents a major shift away from that vision. One of the most serious concerns is safety. The island has essentially one narrow causeway for access and evacuation. Increased density means significantly more traffic, moving through quiet residential neighborhoods, past schools, and onto a constrained access route that could quickly become a bottleneck during a wildfire, tsunami warning, or other emergency. The previous OCP even identified the importance of protecting higher elevation areas for emergency evacuation purposes. That concern was recognized years ago, and if anything, emergency planning concerns are greater today than they were then. Beyond safety, this proposal risks permanently changing the character of High Focus Island. Its value lies in its forest, open space, wildlife habitat, shoreline environment, and low impact nature. Once large scale development occurs, that character is gone forever. Many residents are not saying do not develop the island at all. What people are saying is that any development should remain very low density with large lots that respect the land and ecosystem and the realities of access and evacuation. Ucluelet's greatest asset is not unchecked growth, it's natural beauty and small community character that people come here to experience and protect. I urge Council to reject this amendment and pursue a planning approach for High Focus Island that prioritizes environmental stewardship, public safety, and long-term community resilience over short-term development pressure. I'll also add that I find it difficult to understand when the economies of scale are not being used for construction of homes, how they could possibly build 5 to 10 homes a year at $300 a square foot. That math doesn't math. Anyway, I thank you very much for your time and have a wonderful balance of the meeting.
Thank you, Judy, for your comments. Do we have anyone else on Zoom?
We do, Mayor. We have 2 more people. We have Patricia Sieber. I will now allow you to speak.
Good evening. Good evening. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I wish I could be there in person. I'm on my yearly trip to Revelstoke to help my daughter in her garden, getting my gardening fix. And in my comment, I mentioned Revelstoke, and I think it's very important to understand. And I know you've been dealing with resort communities, and I think perhaps you have heard some of the problems that occur in other resort communities. The kind of math that that's being tossed around by increased supply equals less demand, and therefore prices drop, doesn't really apply. It hasn't applied in Revelstoke since the ski hill first started developing. And talking about us being afraid that our property values will drop in Ucluelet if they build more houses, that hasn't proved true here either, because house prices here have just continued to raise regardless of the number of houses. And so the house that I'm presently sitting in has probably, I would probably say, gone up in value for the past 10 years. Every year it's gone up. And that's not necessarily a good thing for the present owner because she doesn't want to sell it. But it does make her taxes go higher. So some of the rhetoric that's being thrown around about the benefits for more housing, certainly more housing that the people that need it is what we need in Ucluelet. And I've certainly heard their calls, but I'm wondering if the person who's in charge of the daycare can afford a down payment on the houses that are being proposed. Can our workers, our aquarium workers afford a down payment on such a house? In order to be able to rent there, somebody has to own the house. So somebody has to have a down payment in order to even get a mortgage. So I can't see the affordability of these houses. I can't see how we've got that many people in Ucluelet that can come up with a mortgage for. They're saying now $650,000 in their original, not their original, in their last proposal that they presented. they were talking about 899. So, but even if you come down a couple of $100,000, that's still a hefty down payment before you can get a mortgage. So their main argument is that they're doing us a favor to provide housing for those who need it in Ucluelet. I don't buy that that's what is going to happen. I'm sorry, I don't think we have enough people in Ucluelet that can afford a down payment on the houses in order to justify the amount of development that they are going to go through, that we're going to be subjected to. And remember, we'll be living, those of us that live on High Focus, will be living in a construction zone for up to 10 to 12 years. I heard the cost for rock blasting hasn't been determined. There will be rock blasting because High Focus is not flat. And so there will have to be a lot of alteration of High Focus before they can start building those 51 houses in the middle. They can certainly sell off the 25 lots if they're rezoned, and maybe they will make enough to cover all the costs, and then they can just kind of quietly fade away. We don't know. This is what happened with the apartment building on Victoria Road. So we have no guarantees that those houses, once the view lots are sold, those houses will be built. So there's far too much we're being sold a beautiful picture. Lots of lovely ideas are being tossed out that this is something that we all really should appreciate and thank them for. I've seen the kind of houses that they're talking about. There's a lot of those in Revelstoke, but they're not out in the forested areas. They are in the downtown core. They are in smaller neighborhoods where there were older houses, or even in 2 places they're being built on former school grounds. But they're not scattered out into the forest where we have to cut down and rock blast and completely alter the landscape. So I'm opposed to this development. I've been so since the first. I appreciate they've come, they've talked, they've tried to woo us, they've talked to us many times and dismissed our concerns. But I still can't support it. I don't see how what they're promising is really based in reality. So I urge you to leave the zoning as it is now and not grant this rezoning or the change or the official community plan change. So please, thank you for your attention. And I hope that you will make your decision based on not just the promises, but the reality of what it might bring. And in actual fact, probably the expenses that the district will incur will be after the developer has gone and sold off everything, and they will no longer be there to help us fit the bill for improving all of Helen Road and upgrading the sewer system when we need to. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Patricia, for your comments. We have one other person on Zoom.
We have Brendan Manzardo. I will now allow you to speak. You may now speak.
Hello, my name is Brandon Manzardo, 386 Pacific Crescent. It's kind of funny to see Trudy against the one development proposed here in the last 30 years that she's not selling. But yeah, I've lived in Ucluelet for 8 years. I do business here, and my girlfriend and I rent a basement suite together. I started here as an entry-level tourism industry employee, just like so many here in the last couple decades. At 35, I'm one of the youngest here contributing to this conversation, and one of the demographics with the most to lose when it comes to affordability. I love this place. My girlfriend and I talk about the future a lot, about starting a family here one day, about what that actually looks like. And the honest answer, right now, it's hard to picture. Not because we don't want it, we really want it. But the path from where we are to owning a home in this town, a real home where we could raise kids, feel stable, and stop worrying about whether we can afford to stay, keeps getting longer, not shorter. When I heard about this project and the price points, homes in the 650 to 850 range, with a rental suite built in to help with the mortgage, I thought, yeah, that's me. That's exactly who that's for. That's the home I've been trying to figure out how to get. Because realistically, buying a $400,000 lot somewhere and then trying to build a similar home to what is being proposed here is impossible for most. By the time you add construction costs, servicing, financing, and everything else, it's no longer attainable. And even before I get there, while I'm saving and figuring it out, the idea of new long-term rental suites coming onto the market in this town matters because right now there is almost nothing. I've heard concerns tonight about affordability, infrastructure, traffic, and whether this project alone solves the housing crisis. I agree, those are valid concerns. I'm with you. But I also think that we need to be honest about the scale of the problem we are facing. There is no single development that fixes housing or our housing issues on its own. It's a varied approach. Purpose-built rentals, attainable ownership, density increases. Secondary suites, workforce housing, subsidized housing, and market housing all working together. Projects like First Light are important and fill one part of the gap. And Monado is no longer happening. Not every development can happen the same way or structurally as First Light. This developer owns this property and this property only, so saying the plan should simply be moved somewhere else like Monado does not reflect the reality of land ownership or how housing gets built. This proposal also appears to align with the direction of the OCP, more housing choice, more long-term rental opportunities, and more options for people who live and work here. What I worry about is creating a standard where projects are rejected because they are not perfect solutions. Because if we only allow housing that solves every affordability concern at once, we risk building almost nothing at all. And doing nothing has a cost too. It costs people like me, people who've put years into this place, people who spend their money here, work here, volunteer here, want to raise their kids here. We don't leave dramatically. We just eventually do the math and the math wins. One day we're gone and somebody who used to know our name wonders what happened to us. The reality is that more housing supply of almost any kind is still better than no housing supply at all. Because when inventory stays critically low, like it has been for years, the divide between people who can afford to stay and people who can't only gets wider. I don't want to be another person who leaves quietly. I want the story where I bought a home on High Focus Island, where my girlfriend and I started a family here, and where 20 years from now, our kids think of Ucluelet the same way as I do, as home. That's all I want, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for your comments. Do we have anyone else on Zoom at the moment?
We do, Mayor. We have two more. Iman Makarami, I will now allow you to speak. You may now speak.
Hello, everyone. This is Iman Makarami, 1796 Rainforest Lane. First of all, I wanted to say that it's actually quite refreshing to hear the applicants with how the work has been presented and all the arguments in favor of that. The project has a lot of very interesting proposals that make me, as one of the locals, actually interested. However, there is a big however there that let's be honest, no matter how this is framed and marketed, and no matter how much we need housing, I don't think we are looking at some solution for our locals. If you look at the correspondence of the public, many people are saying that I'm a local business and I need staff. Are we really building housing for the staff of our local business? It doesn't look like it. If that's not the case, let's just be honest. Let's say that we are building, starting a new business development, and we will build new houses for people, out-of-town buyers. They come in and live in a beautiful area. But let's remember, the problem that we still have is just going to double, because look at the number of people that this neighborhood is going to attract. It's going to change the population of Ucluelet. I'm not going to come up with numbers, but adding 50 units, each one having its own rental, each one including a family, you can imagine how many hundred people we're adding in a small community of a few thousand people. So this kind of disruption to population, I did hear that there has been studies on infrastructure, which is really promising. However, we're also looking at the support infrastructure. I think that, let's be honest, this is not a solution for the housing problem we have. If we want to solve the housing problem, we should approach it differently. Like many other cities in our province, the housing authority, to make sure that no matter how we decide to maintain or increase the population of our small community, we have the essential people to support this community, to keep us alive, to keep thriving, and then on the side, we carry on with whatever we want to do. In its current format, I suggest that we stick to the current OCP and not make such amendment changes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. We have one more.
We do. Nancy L., I will now allow you to speak. You may now speak.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, this is Nancy Loba at 790 Rainforest Drive. Generally, I don't like the sort of layout of this kind of project. It sort of reminds me of the Lower Mainland, but I can appreciate that the builder developer is trying to put as many units as possible in one place. One point that I just want to raise for council to consider when it comes time for the vote is that the proponent seems to be wanting to put ADUs plus secondary suites on the 60-ish lots in the R6 zone, which is contraindicated based on the bylaw, as well as in the report on February 10th. So by keeping to the current R6 zoning, that will decrease the number of doors, which seems to be somewhat of a concern as well for especially residents down on Helen, which should actually help with some of the traffic issues that they are concerned about. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy, for your comments. Are there any speakers calling in at the moment?
No, Mayor.
And have we received any unpublished correspondence?
We have not.
All right, so we'll go to the second call for speakers. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? We'll just look for first-time speakers first. You both have spoken. Anyone that hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak? Okay, we'll go to second-time speakers. Susan?
In my earlier discussion, I forgot one point that I wanted to emphasize in terms of density and traffic and safety issues regarding development and high focus. We have to also keep in mind, and it goes back to my point of the cumulative effects, that there are undeveloped properties on Helen Road just below the border of this particular property, one of which was recently given permission to put 6 units on their property. And I believe there's at least 2, maybe 3 undeveloped lots in that same area, which could conceivably come looking for also permission to put 6 units on. So we're talking about not just the density of this proposal, but if you add all those together as well, it is a significant addition to the traffic and the safety concerns, evacuation, fire, so on concerns of that constricted area on Helen Road. Just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thanks for your remarks. Lindsay, did you want to speak again?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I just want to note, we talked about pricing and whether it's attainable or not, and I just kind of ran some numbers quickly. On a $650,000 home at a 4.2 interest rate on a 30-year amortization period, so the lowest monthly payment you can get spread out, 5% down. Again, I'm taking some liberties on some assumptions here, assuming that this first-time home buyer doesn't have a lot of money. The mortgage payment is going to be over $3,000 just based on that. That's not including utilities, it's not including property taxes, it's not including home insurance. So whether or not that's actually attainable, I don't know. And these are the units that don't have secondary suites. So these are people who have to be incurring the entire payment themselves. I also want to say during the discussion, the developer indicated that a certain level of density is required in order for the project to be financially viable and to achieve a necessary return on investment. While financially feasibility is understandably important to private developer, it should not be the responsibility of the district or the taxpayers to amend longstanding planning policies solely to ensure a project meets a particular ROI. Land use decisions should be guided by what is appropriate for the community, existing infrastructure, environmental considerations, and consistency with the OCP, rather than primarily by the financial model of one development proposal. At the same time, I do agree that increased density can help lower overall housing costs on a per unit basis. If the goal is to create more attainable housing through density, it may make more sense to focus higher density apartments or condo style development closer to the town core and existing commercial areas where residents can more easily access services, amenities, restaurants, schools, etc. I just want to say I don't think it's the district's issue to be making sure that the developer makes money on a speculative investment. Thank you.
Thanks for your remarks. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Brian?
Okay, I'll make this quick just because I've been listening. And Lindsay, this isn't Brian versus Lindsay, I promise. I'm a real estate agent here in town. All of my clients are young families. I have a massive list and a database of people who want to live here who can't. Now, Lindsay says that $650,000 isn't affordable and it's $3,000 a month, but very few people put 5% down on a property. Also, these micro homes or compact homes, just like St. Jacques, they're going to be a lot like St. Jacques, and there's only 9 of them, so it's not the bulk of the project again. But these 9 micro homes are going to be quite attainable for a young couple who wants 2 bedrooms and a starter home. They are perfect for that. Also, I keep hearing that it's not close to town. It's a 12-minute walk to the break, which is also the co-op. We are speaking about the core of our town. Pushing this out, even as far as Monado or the lands past that, doesn't help create a community. What creates a community is bringing people into the same area, allowing people to walk to the grocery store. We need to understand that High Focus is in the community, and it's also private land. I've been there 3-4 times a week, every week for months, just to check on, honestly, the smell of the sewage treatment plant. And 99% of the time I was there, I couldn't smell it. It wasn't even a big deal. But every time I was there wasn't a lot of people there. I walked those lands a lot. It is unused land that is ripe for an amazing use, which is bringing families to town, parks for kids. One thing to mention, there will be a park there, a playground for kids. How beautiful is that? A community that has a park right there, maybe a tennis court, pickleball courts. Don't hate me for saying that. Anyways, the demographic who is opposed, I love, I respect everybody in this room. I love and respect. I don't speak for them because there's more. The majority is silent. They're at home making dinner for their kids tonight. They're not here speaking for their families. They have responsibilities. They have 2 kids. They have diapers. Their house is a mess. I know because I'm one of them. I also have a massive list of people who want to come. I promise you, these people can afford these homes and they're going to generate an amazing community. And they're going to work for your businesses. And everyone, the last speaker one of the last speakers on Zoom there, this is for staff. The rentals are for staff. 51 homes with rental units for staff. The families will buy the home. Their mortgage will be supported by the staff that serves us dinner, the staff that gives us our groceries, the tradesperson that fixes your sink. These are people, 51 suites. I also somehow became the guy everybody calls when they need a rental. I know how hard it is to find a rental. This is 51. This is massive. This is also 51 great families that are coming to our town. Thank you.
Thanks for your remarks. Any other members of the public attending in person who wish to address council? Yes, Paul? Okay.
I just wanted to make, one quick comment and correct something that was said earlier. Again, this is 85 homes, 51 of the homes, we will build those homes ourselves, and those will have secondary suites. That was not something that we necessarily felt that we had to do. That's what we heard from the community in terms of a demand for rentals. And we've heard this story, and we've heard it a little bit tonight, that in many ways, those rental suites in those 51 homes are what the biggest demand is for now. Then we have people like Brandon, who I don't know, who spoke earlier. That is the missing middle. It's young couples that want to have kids or have just had kids, probably have decent jobs, probably are able to afford a slightly bigger down payment that they borrow from their parents or somebody, but they need to get into a house for under $850,000. We're seeing that everywhere in BC. As soon as you hit that $1 million price point, it kind of knocks them out. So again, the 51 homes have suites. The 9 micro homes do not have suites, and the 25 homes around the periphery of the island that are on significantly larger lots, that zoning allows for a secondary suite and an ADU. The 51 homes in the middle do not allow for a suite and an ADU. It would be one or the other. So I just wanted to correct that. The other thing, again, just in closing, what we often don't see, and we don't see another project in Ucluelet right now where a developer or a builder is building turnkey homes. So a turnkey home that is in that $650 to $850 price range, that has a 10-year warranty, so you're not having to worry about repairs for those first 10 years, and has the mortgage helper in a community where you can rent that suite. That is kind of the sweet spot, and we believe we can hit it. We've run the numbers with Chris. We've run the infrastructure numbers with Gabrielle, and we feel strongly that we can be the first builder in town that's building that product. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll go to Zoom. There'll be one more chance for people in person to speak. Do we have any callers on Zoom?
We do not, Mayor.
And is anyone phoning in?
No.
And are there any unpublished correspondence?
No, Mayor.
All right, so we will go to the third and final call. Are there any members of the public attending in person who wish to speak to council? Gabriel?
I really care about the environmental sensitivities of the project as well. And I saw people's comments online, and people are concerned about the culturally sensitive areas and the cultural trees. Those trees, and I don't want to speak out of line here, have been flagged, and there are boundaries around those trees on the development plan. And the reason for the R6 shift is to accommodate the areas that were flagged as culturally sensitive. So the reason for shifting the R6 is to not be close to the mitten. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other members of the public attending in person that wish to speak? This is your last chance. Seeing none, do we have any callers on Zoom?
No, Mayor.
And is anyone phoning in?
No.
And do we have any unpublished correspondence?
We do not.
All right. I will then move that the May 20th, 2026 public hearing be adjourned at 5:49.